Oh man.
Last week I finished up the wrap on my E30 and it couldn't have come at a better time because this weekend I'm going to be taking it up to E30 Picnic, which is the largest gathering of E30s in the Pacific Northwest. The last thing I want to do before I call it good is swap out the air management on this car. The air management is probably 10 years old and it's starting to fail, so I got some brand new stuff. But first we're going to do some super easy mods this morning. I'm going to start off with these billet door handles that I got from my friends at CA Tuned. I saw these and it was the only time I've ever seen ones come in just raw billet, which is pretty sick. You know, there's a couple variations out there, ones with holes in them, a few that say different things, but I'm ready to see what these look like. And it might be a little too flashy. You know, this car is kind of excessive. That does look a little ridiculous, but it's kind of perfect for this car. Let's put some more shiny stuff on. Quite a few years ago, I slapped this little exhaust tip on here, and for a while I really liked it. It was kind of OEM looking, but went on the internet, bought one of these things. This basically will just slip over the exhaust, and I didn't want anything that was too big because that would look ridiculous on this little car, and I didn't want anything too long, but this was the shortest I could find. So I'll probably slide it as far back as it'll go, and it'll still be at a little bit of an angle. Hopefully it'll be a little straighter. This is kind of weird how this one hits the bumper right here. It's very offset. I'm not sure what's up with that, but yeah, I think if it's kind of just coming to the end of the bumper here, that'll look okay. So let's chop this off and give it a shot. All right, that's as far in as it's gonna go, but I think that's perfect. It's definitely a lot more centered now with the bumper cut out, and I think it'll protrude just perfectly out the bumper. Not really sure how I feel about the exhaust. Definitely sticks out quite a bit. I think when the car is parked and you see the whole thing as a whole, I think it'll look better when I'm not hyper focusing on that. Could always get a different one, I guess, if I can find a shorter one. They're only about 25 bucks, so no big deal. I found this old hood at a junkyard, so I cut it in half. And this will basically cover the core support of the car with the radiator and everything, but it keeps the engine exposed so you can see the cool ITBs. This thing's in pretty crappy shape, unfortunately. Quite a few dents, and obviously the paint is pretty gnarly. It's kind of twisted a little bit too. This side's a little bit lower than that side for some reason. I'm not really sure why, but we'll see what I can do. I'm sure putting the new vinyl over it so it matches will make it look really nice. That's looking really good, but the hood is still a little bit warped, unfortunately. I'm not totally happy with it. I might spend a few more minutes trying to bend it back into place, maybe even put a screw underneath there to hold it down on that side. I'm gonna pull it back in the garage and start pulling apart the air ride. I definitely gotta spend some time on this thing and get it right, because if the air ride's not functioning, it's gonna pretty much be stuck on the lift. So here's the plan as it stands. I'm gonna pull the old tank out that's been leaking for years, get rid of that. I'm gonna pull the old management out. Might keep that around, you never know, try to fix it or something like that, but the pumps are pretty much the only thing that's gonna go back in this car. Once all that stuff is out, I'm gonna put the brand new tank in. This time, I'm gonna put the tank and the pumps in the wheel well so that when you pop the trunk, you got a ton of room in there, you don't see any of that stuff. Hopefully that all fits. Then we're gonna install the new management. Only problem, like I said, is once you do all this and all the air is bled down, the car is basically dropped to the frame and it's not going anywhere until it's all working again. I went to the hardware store and picked up some brand new fittings for the setup, and this tank's got 6 bungs on it. I'm not really sure why they put so many on these things because I'm only gonna use 3. These ones on the corners I was originally gonna use, but they're way too cramped being in that spare tire well, so I'm gonna cap them off. And for this middle one, I was thinking about putting a gauge, but if you saw my 240 air ride setup, I never used the gauge that was on that because you can see the air tank pressure from the management up in the driver's seat. I've had issues with the pumps vibrating a lot in the past, so I bought a 2x2 foot piece of plywood and cut it into a circle. I'm gonna bolt all the components to this, so hopefully it dampens it a little bit since it won't be bolted directly to the metal. Looks like that's all fitting pretty good. I'm gonna double check that all the lines are ran properly and then start bolting everything down permanently. We can plug this thing in here pretty soon and see what the new management's gonna look like. Yesterday I got the tank and the pumps kind of placed where I want them to go and the fittings all tightened up. So today I'll permanently mount those to that piece of wood and then we'll start messing around with the management, plug that in and maybe test it, make sure everything turns on, and then we'll start running some wires up to the front of the car. Airlift includes this nice instruction schematic thing so that you can see where all the wires are supposed to go. Makes it super easy. They've got an included harness that comes with all this. This is the Airlift P3 setup. It's got this really cool looking iPad touch looking thing that I'm actually gonna mount sideways, and all of this will rotate. I had the Airlift V2 in the car before and I really liked it. It just got pretty old, you know, it's 10 years old and it was starting to have some issues. So looking forward to getting this new one installed here. Should be pretty straightforward, so let's knock this out. This old Airlift V2 was actually the first ever air ride kit I owned and installed on a car, and I got lucky enough that it just happened to fit perfectly inside this vent hole. All I did was I popped out the vent, stuffed that thing in there, so luckily I kept that vent. It's been sitting in the garage for years now, and we can pull this thing out, pop it back in like it never happened. I managed to find this 3D printed bezel from some guys in Germany. It was a little bit expensive, but I think it was worth it. It replaces this factory ashtray, so I'm definitely ready to get rid of this gross looking thing. This will hold that air ride controller pretty close to where the shifter is, so I can reach down and dial in the air pressures whenever I want, nice and easily. The wiring's all finished up, everything's working properly. The tank should kick on here in a minute when I got the ignition on. I'm gonna start putting some of these trim pieces back together. Then I'm gonna start reading through the manual here and figuring out how to set up this controller. I need to turn the screen so that it's facing the right direction. I already turned the keypad, and we'll get this thing calibrated so that the pumps, the manifold, pretty much knows where each bag is at all times and what it's doing, you know, what the maximum and minimum is. Now we need to move on to fixing the false floor on this car. I had made a Pergo style hardwood floor like a lot of people did that was popular, you know, with trunk setups. But what I found out was doing that made me not ever want to use the trunk because it was so easy to scratch. I don't have the original anymore. I need to make a new one. I bought a piece of plywood and I'm just gonna cover it with carpet. Right now I need to figure out how to measure it. I think I'm just gonna use some cardboard to kind of make a little diagram and then we'll cut the wood out.
Hey Dad, are we gonna make it tomorrow to Tacoma? Hi everybody.
Grandpa's been upstairs watching my 2-year-old while I'm getting this car finished up. They've been playing crisscross crash for the last 2 hours. I can literally hear it through the ceiling. But anyways, I've got my 1/2-inch piece of plywood here. I'm gonna try to cut this into a perfect shape of the trunk. We're gonna use some of the backing from my vinyl wrap that I did, like this stuff that you know, throw away, the back of the sticker. I couldn't find any cardboard, but I think if I tape some of this together, it might actually work better because it's gonna be easier to cut and it's gonna be a lot more malleable. I kind of pre-measured out the trunk and I had Home Depot cut it roughly 1 inch too big on both directions. So I'm just gonna make this template about the same size and then we'll be really close already and start roughing it in. I'm basically just gonna try to trace this out the best I can without letting it move around. We'll transfer it to the plywood, cut it out, and see if it fits. See if I nailed it on the first try. It's close. I think really all it needs is just a little recess cut here and we'll be good. Unfortunately, I broke the blade for my jigsaw, so I'm gonna have to try this thing. That's not great. Oh man. I can smell like a campfire now. All right, it's pretty dang close. A little bit of trimming and I got that wood fitting in there nice now. We can finally move on to the carpet. I had to order this a couple times to get the right color. They kept sending colors that were like black basically, even though it said gray. So finally I got this one. It's pretty dang close, I'd say. We can glue this thing on there. I'll probably staple it on the back so that it's nice and tight. I tried putting it in the dryer, try to get some of the wrinkles out, like the fold marks, and it kind of worked. I think once I pull it taut, it'll all go away. Let's stick this thing on there. Hopefully it'll dampen some of the sound and make those pumps even quieter. I got that trunk all finished up and it's looking great, maybe as good as OEM or better. It was pretty easy actually to make that false floor. I just think it was a little bit expensive. I probably spent like $80 on it, getting the carpet and the wood and the glue, you know, it was probably close to that. So a little bit more than I wanted to spend, but it looks really nice. And now all that air tank and everything is all hidden away. The air ride was a little tedious getting that functioning, but I'm gonna be taking the car to E30 Picnic tomorrow. It's about 250 miles away. I'm a little bit nervous because I haven't put a lot of miles on this car in the last 5 years. I'd say probably only about 1,000 miles, and it's had a few little problems, a few little breakdowns here and there, so not exactly the most reliable thing. Hopefully everything goes to plan. You know, it's a slammed stance car, and I don't want to hit the oil pan on anything or break the body kit or anything like that, you know, so wish me luck on that. I'm gonna be shooting some footage of my experience driving up there and my experience when I get to this show, so hopefully we'll have a bunch of sick footage of a bunch of cool E30s for the next episode. So make sure you check that out. Check your polarizers.